so let's differentiate between these guys. I'm going to start with Alexis because he's specifically said he develops hotels, but you work for a company that operates hotels. Right? But it's a big company. Accor's been acquiring hotel groups and properties quite aggressively over the last year or two. Quite a big international company. Wyndham's also a big international company, but a slightly different model. Are you able to explain to people what the difference is between your two models?
So, Wyndham Hotel Group, we're an American company. So presently we have over 8,140 hotels, globally operational, representing 700,000 rooms. Majority of these hotels and rooms are under franchise contracts. However, the strategy and the reality in the Middle East and Africa is that majority of the operations are more and more management contracts. We operate as such in an asset-light way. We do not invest and we do not do leases.
So AccorHotels is one of the biggest hotel operators in the world. We operate slightly more than 4,000 hotels in the world, representing nearly 600,000 rooms.
It's not all about size though, guys, is it? Let's get that clear.
The model, I'm going to come to it. I think what makes, so we're not the biggest in the world in terms of number of keys, but we're the first operator in the world, meaning that we manage and operate most of our assets. We hold leading position pretty much everywhere in the world, apart from North America, where we are much more a niche player on certain segments. And yeah, very strong leading position in Europe, Asia Pacific, South America and Africa, and leadership in the Middle East as well. Yeah. So I think that's also a distinction between Wyndham and Accor. I think Wyndham's footprint is really, American with very strong density in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, all right, but just a second, because we're not advertising the brands. I'm just trying to get some information. Amit, do you feel intimidated by being in the middle of these?
Not at all.
The representatives of these two giants. So you're an independent hotel operator, if I can describe you as that. Now, each of you have a recent experience of renovations, rebranding and renovations, if I can put it like that. We should have some slides scrolling up here, if we can get that. Which will illustrate some recent renovations that some of us here on the panel have been working on. Now, or when it eventually starts, but let's try and go down the line of what we're talking about here. The subtitle to this panel, or rather the title, is Beyond Greenfields. So we're talking about how people can enter the hotel industry, if you like, without having to build a new hotel. I'm not quite sure why anybody would want to enter the hotel industry. I mean, the old joke is, how do you make a million in the hotel industry? Well, you start with $1 billion, and then you build a hotel. So there are still people that want to get into our industry, and a way of doing it is acquiring a property. Now, which of you would be best qualified to talk about the acquisition? None of you. Shall I throw it out to the floor?
Okay. In what sense?
Yeah.
Well, in the sense that if you're buying a property that already exists.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, so we have operated a Best Western franchise, if you say, for a number of years. And a couple of years ago, we looked into expanding our portfolio. So as owner-operators, we understood the brand standard. We had experience interacting with their design team as to what they're looking for. So we went out into the market, specifically looking for properties that we felt would be easy to integrate into the brand. And we came across such an opportunity with our second hotel, where we saw that there wasn't much changes we would have to make because we knew what the brand was looking for. We engaged the brand early in that decision-making process. And for us, we looked at an opportunity of really reducing the overheads there because we already ran a hotel. So we thought we could centralize.
So this was a property that was already operating.
It was already operating. It was unbranded.
And why was it up for sale?
I think the owner was really struggling running it efficiently. It wasn't a very big hotel, and I think he had a lot of management overhead on it. And so we saw an opportunity really to introduce a brand to improve that revenue mix in terms of global distribution. We saw that F&B was a potential. It was in a good location, but there wasn't much in pumping out F&B. And again, we saw some cost optimization that we could have brought.
Yeah, so there are advantages. For the current operator or the current owner may be willing to sell because the financing is not correct. They're not experienced enough. It's not easy running a hotel if we've got any individual operators here. And perhaps that's why it's up for sale. Once you've done that, well, you've mentioned the brand, so I'm sure they're glad to hear that. What do you, maybe Panos, what can you bring to an operator or to an owner who's got a property and wants to rebrand it?
So when we look at branding opportunity, if you want, we look at the physical condition of the property and we assess it vis-a-vis three big parameters, if you want. One is the fire life safety compliance, and as an American group, we use an FPA code. And the second thing will be compliance to brand standards, according to the brand that best fits the specific property as per our assessment. And then we look at the general look and feel. So for example, the brand standards might say that we need X, Y, Z size of bed with two side lamps, and then it's all about whether the lamp is the right one, whether it's maybe an obsolete type of lamp, not a practical one, the way it turns, etc. So every assessment in terms of branding or rebranding goes through a property improvement plan that looks into these three factors: fire life safety, MEP, brand standards, and the look and feel.
So that's from the technical side.
Yes.
What do you get? What does the owner get from deciding to go with a big brand? Let's say. What are the advantages?
I think there are several reasons to potentially rebrand a hotel, and I've listed three main ones. Main one is to improve performances. And I think, I don't know if the slides are showing it, but the IB Styles Accra Airport is a very good example. I can share some data after if you want, but it's quite interesting to see how the hotel was performing before and after. So there was a slight PIP, and so property improvement plan that was implemented. But you will see from the pictures that from minor changes, you can actually make the look and feel of the hotel much different. So improved performances. Why? Because of potentially new management in place, access to corporate customers, access to a loyalty base, and access to a brand name. So I think that's one of the first reasons. One reason could be to externalize the management as well. There's some owners that realize that managing a hotel is something quite specific. Even if you appoint a good GM still, do you have the capacity as owner to manage the GM? Because the GM needs a boss.
Shouldn't this owner be asking themselves why they need to rebrand in the first place? Have they got a bad reputation?
No, but it's also the opportunity actually to tell a new story. Because the reality is when customers see an asset and they see a new name, they don't know what happened, if it got sold. But what is important is what it was before and what it's becoming. So I think a lot of hotels that just need a new story, and actually a rebranding as part of a major refurbishment or a minor refurbishment, like you can see on the pictures, is actually helping you also to tell a new story or around your hotel. So I was talking about management. I think that's very important. It's not the same job to be a hotel owner and to be a hotel operator. Managing a hotel can appear like this as something quite obvious. You can think that with a lot of common sense you can manage a hotel because there's nothing technical. It's not like being an engineer or an accountant. But the reality is that it's not that easy. So some owners actually, they want to externalize the management. And I will see a third reason that I can see actually on some markets here in Africa. It's also to defend a market position. A lot of the African markets are evolving a lot. Brands are coming into these markets. So I think Nairobi would be a very good example where you have good quality independent hotels. The market competitive environment has changed. It's becoming more complicated, more competitive, and actually you need to be part of a bigger family to exist and to remain competitive. And that's something I can observe, for example, in Nairobi, where you have more and more owners actually approaching us saying,
that's right.
I've got a Starwood and an Accor property, or maybe not an Accor, but Starwood and an Intercontinental property coming in. Help me. I need your strong brands. I need your customer base.
We just rebranded from a Best Western to a 4-point Sheraton.
In Nairobi.
In Nairobi, we've just done that. But I wanted to ask you, Amit, do you have anything more to add to what Alexis was saying from the point of view of you're an independent owner.
No,
it's a different point of view.
I'd like to leverage the point he made about the story. When you're inheriting an asset, like it or not, there is some history with that asset, good or bad, that you're absorbing. Obviously, the good elements of it, you want to leverage it, you want to tell a story, but especially if there are some negative perceptions as well, or if the market doesn't understand what you've done different. So perhaps investing in pre-marketing and going out there and explaining what your new value proposition is time well spent.
Yeah, what you're trying to gain is increased business, right? When it comes down to it at the end of the day, everybody wants to do better. Panos, what's your take on this? What's the most recent rebrand that you've overseen?
So we had, within the existing portfolio properties that actually, after discussing with the owners, we identified the need for a property improvement plan as the market was becoming increasingly competitive. So we saw the need for a refresh, and we've had two examples, soft renovation and material renovation, if you want. We need to see at the two different paths, for example, because in a soft renovation you might have a very small budget where you're looking at fabrics and large elements of a room.
But this is, to clarify, this is a renovation to improve the property. You're not rebranding it in any way.
Yes. Renovation to improve, yes. And so we've worked with both examples where we worked on soft touches and the full renovation that needed also hotel closure to be able to allow the works to happen at a faster pace and have the minimum impact on the operations.
Where have you done this recently?
That was UAE, our recent ones in UAE.
Okay. All right. Well, look, we've started to move on from rebranding to the idea of renovation in general. So if you've got a property that's in poor condition or is just in need of an upgrade because the guy down the road has upgraded his hotel, then you've got to some extent to keep up with the Joneses, as we say. Would you advise your owner, depending on the scale of the renovation, would you advise your owner to close the hotel or to keep it open? And what are the advantages or disadvantages of each? Who wants to take that one?
I think it depends if you're an owner or if you're an operator. I think as operator, I'd rather have a full closure to have, especially if it's a conversion. If it's an existing asset that we are refurbishing, it's a different story. We can do it floor by floor and keep the hotel running. If it's a conversion, of course, I think it's easier for us to, launch the new product in the market fully refurbished, of course.
You can open with a bang.
But then we need to be flexible because we are, of course, from an owner's perspective, it's another story. 6 months of hotel closure means no cash flows, means people you have to pay. Sometimes the bank you have to.
What happens to those existing guests? Don't they go back down to his hotel? And then he's going to try his hardest to keep them.
Well, it's a good question. It's difficult to answer because I'm not in operation, so I'm not there physically every day when a conversion happens. But what we try to do is, of course, to honor existing reservation and try to make the transition as smooth as possible. That's what we did in Nairobi. We've opened an economy hotel in Nairobi Westland as an IB styles that previously was trading with the Tune brand. And of course, we've tried to make the transition as smooth as possible. And honestly, officially the transition happened on the 1st of September with all the IT systems being plugged to our centralized IT system.
Do you know if you lost any existing business?
No, I don't think we did, because all the reservations were honored at the price at which they were confirmed. And it's just.
And you closed this property?
No, we didn't close it just because it was actually an asset in quite good conditions, and the owner was looking for mainly a strong brand and the management capacity in the market, and they were suffering, not benefiting from good brand awareness. But that's also, it's a very good transition, is to say that conversion, if you want to do a conversion with Accor, if your asset is of good quality, there is no need for a big PIP. Why? Because we've got non-standardized brands that actually are flexible enough to be able, as long as the quality standards are there, that actually allow a conversion without reinventing the thing and redoing what has already been done.
In the interest of fairness, other brands are available.
No, of course, but I think it's
these
important
guys probably also offer the same.
No, but I think it's also important to understand that, and of course all the brands have the same, I'm sure, strategy, trying to create as much as possible non-standardized brand to offer some flexibility and of course grow via the acquisition of existing assets. So it's possible if the product is of good quality, it's possible without again having to change something that is already there and wasn't proper.
Amit, what would you do given the choice? Would you close the hotel or would you try and keep it open?
Well, look, as an owner, we would definitely try to keep it open, but I think you have to be realistic.
What are the drawbacks of keeping it open?
Well, I think number one, you've got to be realistic about the occupancy hit. Certainly if you're doing a harder refurb and it's going to generate noise, it's going to people walking through the property. Yes, you might retain some customers, but you'll have some customers walk away. So I think you have to be realistic in your business plan and factor in those conditions if you're going to keep it running.
Any warnings for people who are contemplating a renovation and keeping the property open?
Well, I think in our specific example, it was a softer refurb, so it was a lot easier. But I think looking forward at...
So not too noisy.
Not too noisy and largely limited to activities in the room itself, no major structural changes or anything like that. But looking into other projects, more complex projects, these are things that we would have to think long and hard about. And like I said, when you open, you want to open with a good impression. So you don't want to
But have any of you been staying in a hotel, not your own, obviously, when a renovation's been going on?
Soft renovation, yes.
Soft renovation.
And it's not pleasant because there will be dust, there will be noise, there will be workers coming in and out, and the hotel will not operate in its full capacity and, let's say, offering. So the experience is discounted. And and the problem is that with the social media problem and blessing is that if something goes wrong, there will be a posting about it, there will be a comment. Comment stays for quite some time, basically online, and this can affect bookability of the property in the future. So one has to be really cautious. And on the points that we shared, I think it's a lot correlates to the present condition of the project, the budget of the owner, and the vision that has been set for the property. And then, for example, I've seen renovations, if you have multiple buildings, clearly it's very easy. If you have multiple floors, then maybe you can section certain floors. But then when you start talking about, for example, if you don't have fresh air in the rooms, or if the MEP is obsolete, or if you want to change your electrical provisions in the room, these are major changes. So the floor has to go out of order. And if your structure is very much horizontal and spread, it might be that you won't be able to create a buffer of certain floors in between the floor under renovation.
And the point of creating a buffer is to protect the guests that are on other floors. I mean, you're talking from the operational point of view here. From the guest experience, how do you think the management should brief the staff at the hotel when you're about to close 3 floors and start making a noise.
So
The reason I ask is because I've stayed in a hotel and said, what's all that noise? Oh, I don't know, says the person on the desk. Yeah, it is noisy, isn't it? I'll find out.
So clearly, one has to acknowledge the fact, the reality that there are works that are taking place, and ideally, whenever there is an interruption potential interruption in the operation of the hotel, whether it's from within or there are construction works that are taking place outside, it's better to advise people of that because then they know and then it's kind of expected. And chances are that the bookings that you take also will come with a certain discount due to the disturbance
Alexis,
factor.
you want to
Yeah.
No,
something to
I mean, for me, the obvious way is, of course, to inform the customer that he's going to be staying
Yes.
in a hotel under renovation. And usually, you can see it in the price. You get better price because of, suffering from
Well, and of course,
from the
there's
works.
also an opportunity there to pre-launch your new and exciting all-day dining or renovated
Exactly,
rooms.
because I mean, a lot of refurbishment are being done in phases. We try as much as possible to start with the common areas because that's what most people see. And at least if you're staying in a hotel where one floor is currently one floor of rooms is currently being under refurbishment,
Yeah.
if at least you can benefit from brand new common areas. It mitigates the negative impact of having a little bit of noise
Yeah,
but of course, it's something you have to live with. It's like
yeah.
it's like an airline that is still operating all the aircraft with the old TV system, and
Yeah.
you have to live
It's
with
got
it.
to be,
It's,
you have to upgrade, right?
you have to operate, and you have to live with it. And the whole idea is to try to stay competitive as try to work on your RevPAR during this period. It's going to be impacted, but try to find a clever mix between getting a hit on occupancy or maintaining occupancy because you want to maintain also your guests. But
So would you say there's given the choice, what's easier to rebrand or not even rebrand, but to renovate an existing property or to build a new one?
depends on the property, I would say. But,
I have a take on that.
You wanna
So
start?
if it's there've been instances where the condition of the property was so obsolete that the best recommendation was basically and has been to demolish. I mean, it will cost you maybe $70,000, $100,000, $150,000 to demolish a structure of 10 floors or whatever, and then you can do a fresh start. There are properties out there that are 40 years old, 30 years old, standard sizes. They were much different at those times. So sometimes it's better to just create something new, especially for locations that are prime, and you have a AAA location with an asset which is like C. So it makes much more sense. Plus, remember that it's much easier to create a new structure from scratch, properly designed, than take an old structure and trying to fix it. It's
Yeah,
much
you
more.
get pre-opening delays like the last
Yeah.
guys were talking about. It all becomes very expensive.
it's again, I think each story is different. It also depends what the owner wants to do. I go with Panos. If you see on a piece of land that has value, it's a question of what's the best use of this piece of land. If there's an existing asset of good quality, 8 floors, you don't have the financial capacity actually to do a hotel of 400 keys, but only 200 keys. Maybe the market can absorb 400 keys, so you will target 200 keys, and as a consequence, you might not demolish the structure. If you think that the market can absorb 500 keys and you're capable of supporting such project, then you might be tempted to get rid of the building, build a new structure, 16, 20 floors, and make a bigger one. I think each case is different. It depends on a lot of variables, which is the market, your financial capacity, and you just need to work on several scenarios and see which one is the best one. And then it's also a question of risk.
This brings us back kind of circularly to the beginning of the discussion that we were having. Is there anyone here who's considering opening a hotel?
Doing a conversion. Don't
Doing a conversion.
don't only go to Hilton stands. I know they've made a very good announcement, but
No. Oh, is there somebody down there on that table that wants to open
we are also more than happy to provide $50 million for hotels conversions. Actually increasing the number to 55.
I'm just curious as to bringing it back again. Would you advise somebody who thinks it's a good market to get into? It is, joking aside, it is a a dependable market can provide a good income. But looking to acquire a property, in reality, there are not that many that are suitable to acquire, are there? I mean, there are many properties. Take the Intercon in Lagos is overvalued, up for sale, but overvalued because it costs too much to build. Oh, they can hear me.
Yeah, can we get the microphone?
So we don't have to answer his question.
No. Okay, now.
I was saying, so to can't hear the questions, it means we don't have to answer his questions.
Can you hear this? Can you hear that? Okay.
Well, the point I was making is that in reality there are not that many suitable properties to acquire. Are there? I mean, I guess that you guys keep your eyes on the market. I was talking about the Intercon in Lagos that costs too much to build and is kind of perennially up for sale, but it's way overvalued, so they're not likely to find a buyer. The bank thinks it's worth more than it is, and it's not based on future earnings. In reality, there are not that many properties to acquire, are there? Suitable properties? What do you think, Amit?
I think, definitely they're far and few, and you have to spend a lot of time researching and understanding the asset. But I think there are interesting things opening up in the industry. If you look at this concept of independent boutique hotels, collection hotels, could there be an opportunity, for a little bit more flexibility from the brand as far as structural rigidity, that can bring these nice locations, nice assets
Well, these guys have talked about their flexible brands. There are, Curio, Hilton. There are others. I'm sure you've got one as well. That's a soft brand that can be used to house an existing property.
But to answer the question, I think your example in takeover, there's two things. There is assets, of course, that potentially are on the market, and there's a question of what's the fair value of the asset based on an existing brand and business model. So that's one thing. And then the other question is okay, are there opportunities in the market to actually buy where pretty much the investor's equity story would be, okay, I buy this asset, I rebrand it, and that's how I create value. There are a few. The reality is that there are not that many in Africa independent assets of good quality allowing an easy conversion. But there are some, and in some cases, if you buy at, for example, 8 or 9 times the EBITDA multiples, so at market multiples, and you nominate an operator and you create some improvements because the management was not that good, and you manage to have your EBITDA increasing by 25 or 30%, and you sell at the same multiple after 5 years, you've done quite a good return. So that's something possible. It's actually less risky to a certain extent than building from scratch because you don't have to face the construction risk. You're already buying an asset that is operating in the market with decent performances. It's sometimes easier actually to raise debt with the banks because there are some existing cash flows, and you're just there to bring the hotel performances from here to here. So it's possible. It's not always the case, but it's possible, and I think that some investors have this talent to find assets that are of good quality but not properly managed, and where they see a potential upside, with a brand or not. Because I'm not saying that brand is the only solution, but sometimes it's one.
So there are two main reasons that that owners or developers would be choosing to renovate then. One is if they've acquired a building that already exists, and the other is if they own that building and they need to renovate to keep up with the market. Ladies and gentlemen, does anybody have any questions for this, for these esteemed people here who know their stuff? I'm not sure how we're doing for time, Annie. How are we doing?
It's 10 past 4.
4:10. Well, I think that probably just wraps it up for this afternoon. Amit, just as a final word, would you recommend people, potential investors, do this?
I think in a lot of good markets, sometimes it's very difficult to find an opportunity for greenfield, right? So we see this all the time where you have good locations, fairly good products, but they're just missing something, you know. So if you can, spend the time understanding the place, understanding the potential, from an owner perspective, I would encourage, brands to look into it. It's a good opportunity, but you've got to be careful.
And you have to work hard.
You got to work hard, yeah.
So, Panos, why should people be calling you?
Yes, so let's take like a difficult example. Let's say a hotel, an owner is interested in acquiring a hotel that requires major refurbishment. Let's take, a worst case scenario. So I would say the first thing you should do, you should sign up with an operator. So agree on the brand, sign up with the operator, have them review the existing drawings of the hotel, the as-built, have them propose changes on the area schedule and the service flow of the property. Then once, along with the operator, you should always also look at hiring additional consultants that can help you go through the journey. So these are architects that can redesign in line with the recommendations of the operator, interior designers that can execute the vision of the operator and the vision of the owner, and hire all those additional consultants that will help you execute the vision. So it's the same problem. Hotels that go wrong, and for example, they take a long time, or they go over budget. It's because the designers were not there, or bad designers were there.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And maybe the wrong operator was on board, the recommendations were not there. But if something is studied properly, then for sure it will work. If all the parties that are needed to make this a success are present, then for sure the probability of this really happening on time and on budget, it's much higher. So, yeah.
Well, reason for people to call us for a conversion, I think the first one is because we have the brand. So we have, I think the brand that always suits the hotel, because we have a good track record in that. So I mentioned IB Styles, Nairobi, Accra, but there's also two Pullmans in DRC and Sofitel in Abidjan that are conversions and show the track record for AccorHotels in Africa. And third reason, because we can be very, very quick and very reactive. And I think that's very important from another's perspective. He wants always, a transition to be as quick as possible. I'll just give a quick example coming back to the IB Styles Accra, where we've had the capacity to put a task force in place very, very quickly after the signature of the contracts, and to have the hotel distributed online from day one. And I think that's also something important, capacity. And I work for a big organization. Most of competitors are big organizations, but big does not always means exactly unresponsive. And I think we've done some good jobs in the past takeovers in Africa.
Well, I think, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize then, whatever your reasons are for renovating, whether it's rebranding or you've acquired a property, I think the points that all of them made, Panos' last one, obviously I'm going to endorse, is the same as with a new build, is do your planning in detail in advance and make sure you know exactly what you're trying to do, how much it's going to cost, and what the stages of the work are, and whether you're going to close or whether you're not going to close. So on that note, I think we'll say thank you very much to our distinguished panelists, and I mean that most sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.